Hi everybody, I'm Ryan. Today we're going to look at Grixis Midrange in Standard and how to sideboard with that deck against the top 10 other decks in Standard. So the point of looking at the top 10 is you'll have the most popular decks and you know how to sideboard against them, and hopefully you can use our examination of those matchups in this video to be able to sideboard against like other decks in the format. So let's jump into it by looking at cards in the sideboard of Grixis Midrange. So this is the build of Grixis Midrange, where we play a Disdainful Stroke in a sideboard, mostly against decks that have big mana things that we're afraid of. We're playing in a Negate because a lot of the midrange decks are leaning pretty non-creature, and it's solid against most of these slow decks. We're playing 3 Cut Down for these aggro decks. We're playing 2 Duress for these control decks, these blue-red like ramp decks. It's also really solid against mono-white midrange, I think. Playing 2 Go for the Throat for decks that have a slew of creatures that we want to take out that are not artifacts. We're playing 2 Henrika. Henrika is really solid against these decks that like we think the match is going to go very long. We're playing 4 Siphon Insight, again against decks that we think the matchup is going to go very long. So the first and most popular deck is the Mirror Match. In the Mirror Match, we are going to bring in Negate. We're going to bring in Henrika Domnathi. That's an awful last name. And we're going to bring in 4 Siphon Insight. These are the cards we really, really want to see play. We're going to bring out the Cut Down. We're going to bring out the Make Disappears, out the Go for the Throats, mostly because there's not a ton of creatures we're super worried about. We're just trying to, like, we have plenty of 1-for-1 removal spell that can hit, like, other things like Reckoner Bankbuster. And we are going to shave 1 Blood Tithe Harvester, mostly because it doesn't give the midrange advantage like the rest of these cards do. It's probably the worst card of all of them. The second most popular deck is the Esper midrange deck. The Esper midrange deck, most of them are played like creature versions of the midrange, which is a little different than the Grixis and mono-white midrange decks. So we actually like Go for the Throat in this matchup. Cut Down is actually really solid against these Esper decks because besides like AO and Shieldred, Cut Down can kill everything else the turn it comes out. But these matchups are still going to go pretty slow. So like Henrika, we're going to be taking out the Abrades because it doesn't line up as well as Cut Down against most of their creatures. We're going to be taking out Negates because, again, this is creature-based. Now, I don't want to bring in the Siphon Insight because, like, if they have an aggressive hand, with their creatures, we can't afford to play a card that essentially does nothing the turn it comes out, or we'll just die. And if we're at a point in the game that Siphon Insight is, like, safe, we're probably winning the game anyway. However, I do like Henrika because it gives us similar advantage to Siphon Insight and also can block Raffine really, really well. That being said, similar to the reason we're not bringing in all the Siphon Insight, we're going to cut 1 Reckoner Bankbuster. I think Reckoner Bankbuster is like okay in the matchup. If the game goes long, I think it's better than Siphon Insight because you can block with it really well. But again, it's difficult to justify playing things that do nothing the turn they came out against decks that like might just run us over. The third most popular deck in Standard is mono-red aggro. Against mono-red aggro, we are bringing in the Cut Downs, obviously. We are bringing in Go for the Throats. I actually like Henrika because we can just play it and immediately flip it. And I actually think Duress is good against the matchup now, especially like since the Jaya version is becoming more and more popular. And we're going to take out cards that don't do a lot the turn they come out, like Reckoner Bankbuster. We're also going to be cutting Wandering Mind because it doesn't block very efficiently, and some Fable of the Mirror Breaker, because while it's a fine blocker, while we can dig with it and the flip is fine because so it can kind of sometimes be 2 blockers, what it does is often really slow, and very often what I found is you play it, they kill the thing, and then they kill you, and so you need things that actually affect the board directly. But I actually like Fable long term a little bit more than I like the Wandering Minds. The fourth most popular deck is the Is It Ramp deck that is supposed to be built to beat us. Against the Is It Ramp deck, we are bringing in Disdainful Stroke to take out the cards that are put in the deck to just wreck us. We're bringing in Negate for things like Mightstone, Weakstone, win these counter wars, like stop them from drawing cards, etc., etc. Same thing with Duress. But remember, we can't think of this deck as like a grindy matchup because if this goes long, they are going to kill us with Skitterbeam Battalion and Cityscape Leveler. That is just what is going to happen. So we need to make sure that we like actually apply pressure a little bit in this matchup. So I don't like these grindy cards like Henrika and Siphon Insight. We're going to take out a Cut Down. We're going to take out the 2 Go for the Throats. Again, these cards on the sideboard that we didn't bring in. Go for the Throat doesn't actually kill anything but the Fable, and Cut Down, same thing. And we're actually going to shave 1 Reckoner Bankbuster again because we're not looking to grind against this deck. If we grind against this deck, we will lose to Skitterbeam Battalion. The 5th most popular deck is Mono White. Midrange. So Mono White Midrange is another spell-based midrange deck. It plays Planeswalkers, board wipes, Reckoner Bankbuster, wedding enchantments like Wedding Announcement and Restoration of a Ganjo to beat us. So we're going to bring in Negate so we can get rid of that stuff that is, obviously very good against us. Duress is pretty good in this matchup because they're able to Windmill Slam a lot more powerful cards, like making sure Wedding Announcement never hits the board or Wandering Emperor never hits the board are ways that we can make sure that we win the matchup. And of course, these cards that are in our sideboard because we are looking to grind. Against the newest Mono White midrange decks, I don't actually see a point in keeping in a lot of removal because a lot of their cards are either too small for them to like matter, like Spirited Companion, or enter with enough shield counters that there's actually no point in doing anything. And they're just going really, really wide. So I like taking out Cut Down. I don't like a Braid in the matchup. I'm not even a fan of Go for the Throat in the matchup. I don't want to play that game. And similarly, I like cutting the Bloodtithe Harvester. Bloodtithe Harvester is blocked really early on. Its minus doesn't really kill anything relevant most of the time. So really it's just like 2 mana, make a blood token and like get blocked by a Wedding Announcement token, like whatever. So this is how I like to sideboard in that matchup. The sixth most popular deck is the Soldiers deck. So we are bringing in a ton of removal. This is our basic go wide strategy that we're playing against. So we're bringing in the cut downs. We are bringing in Go for the Throats. This is less about like weathering the storm like with mono red aggro and more about just like we need to just remove everything that they are playing. So I don't like Henrika like we do against mono red aggro because I think the flip and the lifelink is a lot less relevant against soldiers than it is against mono red. That being said, we are bringing out the negates because it is pretty much solely a creature deck, and we are bringing out the Reckoner Bankbusters, 3 of them, because again, against these aggressive decks, we can't really afford to just do nothing on a turn of the game that matters, because if we have time to play this and have it be relevant, we probably have won the game. We've probably weathered the storm enough. So I view kind of the Mardu midrange deck as the Junt deck. So what I want to do against them and making sure that we can grind properly with them is all these card advantage cards like Siphon Insight and Henrika and Negate. Negate mostly so Fable the Mirror Breaker and Wedding Announcement don't actually enter the battlefield ever. And what we're doing, we're cutting back on these removal spells that don't really affect much. And because these games are going to go long, I actually don't like Make Disappear in this matchup. It can take out something early on, but really we care about what's going on in the long game. And then being able to sneak a Fable, a late Fable or a late Wedding Announcement, or really anything underneath a Make Disappear, I'm not really in on that. That being said, I like bringing in one of the Go for the Throats to try to answer their big mana creatures, because again, this is sort of a mixture between the Grixis and the mono white deck, and they play some of the best creatures between both of the decks. Rakdos midrange retreating really similarly to the Grixis matchup. They're just not playing counter spells and these creatures that give them card advantage. However, they are playing a little bit scarier creatures in Graveyard Trespasser and Shieldred. So I like Go for the Throat, Henrika, Siphon Insight. We are bringing out Cut Down. We're going to shave a little bit on a Braid because it doesn't take out Shieldred. It does kill Graveyard Trespasser, but a lot of them aren't playing the full four Reckoner Bankbusters anymore, so a Braid becomes like, eh. These matchups are going to go really long, so I don't want them getting in under Make Disappear. And we're going to shave the negates. Again, we are just trying to go long. It's like the mirror match, but they're just playing better creatures this time. So as long as we answer the creatures, continue to get this card advantage, we win these matchups. Mono Black Aggro is the 9th most popular deck in the matchup. This is kind of like Soldiers. It's just a creature-based aggro deck that plays Invoke Despair and actual removal spells. So we're bringing in the Go for the Throats. We are bringing in the Cut Downs. And I actually don't care that they're playing Invoke Despair, to be totally honest with you. So I am cutting the negates. I'm cutting the Reckoner Bankbusters. And even though I want to take both of these out, I probably just like leave a negate in and call her good. And the 10th most popular deck in Standard is the Mono Blue Tempo deck. I think Duress is pretty good against this deck. I think Negate's pretty good against this deck. I think Go for the Throat is pretty good against this deck. I also think Henrika is pretty solid because, like, you know, they don't have a lot of creatures, so the each player sacrifices one is almost always excellent. Most of the good versions of this deck play only Haughty Djinn and Tolarian Terror, but some play Delver of Secrets, so keep that in mind. I don't think that's a reason to keep in Cut Down, though, because it rarely kills Haughty Djinn, and some versions just straight up don't play Delver. We don't want cards that are only good in really corner cases. Same thing for the reason we're siding out a Braid, or leaning pretty heavily on Go for the Throat. And we're going to shave 2 Reckoner Bankbusters. This matchup rarely goes long because if they have an aggressive hand we can't answer, we lose. If they don't have an aggressive hand or we can answer their aggressive hand, the game goes long and we just get advantage in other ways. They cycle a lot of cards, essentially, but there's not a lot of advantage besides Search for Discovery, and they have very few threats. So that's how I sideboard against the top 10 most popular decks in Standard with Grixis Midrange. If you like this video, if you want more videos like this, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description, especially in Discord and Twitter. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.